Would you like to hear a story? Today's tale is called The Story Collector. It's an original short story I wrote last month, and I'm excited to share it with y'all. If you just want to listen, feel free to put this on in the background. But if you'd like to read along, the paragraphs will be on screen as well. And without further ado, The Story Collector by Tobin. Tate Thompson loved people watching, though the hobby was a double-edged sword. If she gave away her presence at all, the illusion was shattered. And if people realized that the old brick townhome on 114 Ivy Street wasn't quite as empty as it looked, then a knock on the door was sure to follow. And Tate hated answering the door. Most often, she'd find someone standing there with a grin too big for their face, hoping to sell her anything from religion to vacuums. Less often, there were the couriers, waiting to exchange some parcel or paper for Tate's loopy, practiced signature. And still rarer were the one-of-a-kind encounters that often left Tate wishing she'd just kept the door shut. Tate tended to categorize these latter sorts of encounters through emotion. Some were uncomfortable, like the man who'd followed her home after a coffee date gone wrong, more persistent than even the hardiest Jehovah's Witness. Some were frustrating, like the lady who scratched up Tate's lock with a key that did not fit, arguing with Tate for nearly 10 minutes before discovering she had the wrong address. But Tate's most recent porch guest, the sharply dressed man with a bag of stories, left her feeling something else entirely. The day he arrived started like every June weekend for Tate. On this lazy, warm afternoon, she decided to combine her people-watching hobby with another favorite, book reading. 114 Ivy Street had a nice big window close to the front door, with a ledge wide enough to sit comfortably on. The ledge had plenty of room for a pillow and a well-loved copy of Jane Eyre, and so there Tate sat. Her street wasn't a busy one, the flow of silence broken only occasionally by a neighbor on foot or bike. The window served as a glass lens through which Tate imprinted her opinions and thoughts onto each unsuspecting passerby. She made the mental switch back to the grounds of Thornfield Hall only after her subject passed from view, spending 5 or 10 minutes there until a new one approached her makeshift lens. As the day went on, hunger poked at her stomach, but she ignored it. Tate would continue this habit for almost 2 hours until she saw the man. Some movement in her periphery caused her to look up from the book, and she left Jane without a second thought. Rounding the street corner was a man who wore a brown jacket and matching slacks, with shiny leather shoes laced with neat little bows. He had on a white dress shirt that, despite the August heat, looked to be in pristine condition, with no visible sweat stains or marks. The man's face reminded Tate of something familiar, something close to her heart, though the moment she looked away, it became a blur, with not even the color of his hair staying within her mind's eye. In his hands, he carried a large brown bag, a shade darker than his suit. A single rope was threaded through the top of the bag, knotted in 3 places to keep it shut. The man began at the first apartment on the corner, approaching the faded green door of 102 Ivy Street and knocking upon it 4 times. After a minute of silence, he nodded to himself and moved to the next door patterning the wall of townhouses Tate called home. He made quick progress, 7 units away, then 6, then 5. With each successive knock, Tate could make out more creases and designs on the man's bag, and her anticipation, for what she was unsure, rose higher. Only at apartment 110 was his knock met with anything other than silence. The door swung open, and Tate's heart rose into her throat. A sudden, irrational fear gripped her, and she found herself wishing that she was the one who had answered the door. She was the one who lived 4 doors closer to the corner, the one to be the first to... To what? Scarcely had the thought crossed her mind before the door to 110 slammed shut. The man nodded, though his almost recognizable face remained emotionless. 3 doors down, then 2. Jane Eyre slid to the floor with a dull, unnoticed thump as the man approached. He took 2 steps toward her door, then stopped and turned his head to the left, towards her window seat. Tate found her lens flipped around as she became the object of scrutiny. The man gazed at her with sharp gray eyes for several seconds before stepping out of view. 4 loud knocks sounded on her door. A sudden impulse climbed into the forefront of her mind, warning her to flee, to run and hide somewhere in the darkest corners of her home. She had to deny whatever request this strange man had, for surely he wanted something that those in 110 were unwilling to give. Tate blinked twice, wrenching back her thoughts enough to stand up and open the door. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, but her mind went blank as the man spoke to her. "Good afternoon," May I have your story? The man wasn't singing, but his voice had a certain melodic tone to it. It was soft and comforting, curious without being demanding, and it lingered in her ears even after his lips were closed. The man tilted his head, and Tate realized with a surge of embarrassment he was waiting for her response. My story? Are you a journalist? Tate knew the answer even before he shook his head. I'm no reporter, the man said. I work for no organization outside of myself. So, why do you want to know my story? And what do you mean by story? Who are you? The questions tumbled from her mouth in a flood, bouncing and rolling over each other in a nearly incomprehensible stream. Unfazed, the man answered the tide in reverse order. I am Abram. By story, I mean yours. Quite simply, everything that makes you, you. That you are willing to share, of course. As for the why, Abram shrugged. I collect stories. I'd love to have yours, with your permission. And you're not selling me anything or tricking me in any way? Tate asked, mind racing. Just so you know, my roommate is upstairs and she has a gun, she added, hoping the lie would remain hidden despite her rushed tone. I assure you, ma'am, I have no need of money or anything of value within your home, Abram replied. I have no need for trickery, as I found that asking for what I want works far better than any means of deception. Honesty is the best policy, after all. Despite the strangeness of the whole situation, from Abram's request to the brown bag he still carried, Tate found herself almost at ease. She still carried discomfort from the plain fact that a strange man stood outside her home, nearly a foot taller than she. Should Abram want to harm her, or just let himself inside? He very easily could. But the sun shone brightly, and the street was open and clear, and the man had thus far displayed nothing more than a quiet, respectful demeanor. These things did help lower her guard. Not completely, but enough to hear out Abram's odd request just a little bit more. So what would you do with my story? Tate asked. At this, Abram's smile brightened, and he set down his bag. Allow me to show you, he said, untying the bag's first knot with long and dexterous fingers. This allowed him to open it enough to pull out a small metal frame. He unfolded the frame and stood it up next to the bag before reaching in once more, emerging this time with a scroll of some thick white material. Unraveling it, he stretched the corners of the frame and stood back proudly. Curiosity and foreboding danced together in Tate's mind as she stared at this makeshift easel. This dance was short-lived, as Abram's melodic voice sounded again. May I have your name? He asked. Your full name, if you don't mind. Tate Channer Thompson, she said. Abram bent down and untied the bag's second knot. After a moment of searching, he pulled out a long white horsehair brush with a delicate point. The tip looked to be clean, and despite the lack of paint, Abram began to drag the brush across the canvas. Tate gasped in spite of herself. A line appeared, too light to be ink, yet too smooth to be lead. Watching him draw the line, Tate again felt that sense of almost familiarity, like a memory right on the tip of her tongue, just begging to be remembered. After finishing the line, Abram turned to her. A fine start. Beautiful, if I do say so myself. But there's so much more to you than just your name. Share anything and everything you can remember. Tell me, Tate Channer Thompson. Tell me who you are. This sudden burst of passion caught Tate off guard, leaving her own name lingering in her ears. She'd never loved the name Tate before. It worked, but it was uncomfortable, and she was used to wearing it as one would a jacket that's one size too small. Maybe it was Abram's song, the distinct tune with which he pronounced it, but suddenly the jacket fit. Tate was more than just her name. Tate was who she was, and only Abram could see that. Well, I was born in Iowa, Tate began. I'm the youngest of 3, all girls. Dad used to call me Tater Tot. She spoke slowly at first, unsure which details a man would be interested in. With Abram's silent encouragement, the pace quickened. He never asked a question or interrupted her, matching the strokes of his brush with the memories she shared. He made no distinction between what Tate considered to be interesting and what she thought of as mundane, as he worked every detail into the canvas as equals. Tate started with her earliest memories, riding on a tractor in her dad's lap, tracing the letters of her own name in the dirt, the antics of Charlie, a golden retriever with a shiny blue collar, and how she'd wept every night for a month after they had to put him down. She scraped through her mind, opening doors that had remained shut for years, prying open dusty drawers of memories with a crowbar of intrigue. Tate continued on in this way for over an hour, Rather than a concise narrative, she poured out her individual memories in whatever order she remembered them, moving on only when there was nothing more to be found. 26 years worth of memories and identity, broken down and wrapped into sentences, unwrapped just as quickly by Abram's brush and laid bare on the canvas. Her first crush, Dan Tedder, and how braces ruined his ability to whistle. The dozens, possibly hundreds of notebooks she'd gone through since middle school, writing a page every day, no more and no less. The way she struggled with math but loved science. Setting up a telescope with Ellie, her oldest sister, in the backyard. Abram was a machine, working with unrelenting determination. He was a therapist, a priest, and a judge, all in one. Though he never once turned his eyes away from the dance of his brush, Tate felt seen in a way she'd never experienced before. She was taking form on the canvas, an image that grew clearer the longer she talked. She treated every memory like the one before, no matter how shameful or awful she might have considered it previously. All were good, and all were bad, and all were beautifully, uniquely her. She shared everything because Abram needed everything, and as she shared, she felt herself become lighter. Each memory seemed to be a microweight holding her down, releasing her only once it was transferred to the canvas. A cloud hid the sun, but neither Tate nor Abram paid it any mind. The street was empty now of any passerbys. The only other presence was a soft wind that strolled down the street, kicking up some loose leaves and kissing Tate gently as it passed. It brought up memories of the feeling of the breeze in her hair as she drove into the city for the first time with the windows down in her '97 Civic and all her earthly possessions hiding in that rusty trunk. Her hunger was gone. Any previous evening plans were gone. Jane Eyre was gone. Had Tate been able to pick up the book, she would have found the pages blank. And still Abram drew. The fine lines of her shoulder-length blonde hair, the intricate, lifelike curvature of her lips, the broad strokes shaping her nose. And what about the eyes? Eyes were the reason she'd given up on art, after that one week when she was 19 and had the sudden urge to create a self-portrait. She'd spent days looking at photos and into the mirror, doing her best to replicate the shape, color, or lashes. It was the first time her best hadn't been good enough. But as Abram dotted the eyes and moved the brush away, Tate realized he'd done in an hour what she had never been able to do, and a brief tinge of jealousy hit her. But it vanished just as quickly as it had arrived, for as Tate looked at the canvas, there was no room for any emotion other than awe. The image did not hold a copy or a replication of her eyes. Rather, the canvas was a mirror. The eyes were her eyes, looking into her just as much as she could look into them. The painting was almost complete, her story almost finished, but the man had stopped, and so had she. "We're nearly there," Abram said. "Complete your story. What haven't you given, Tate Chandler Thompson?" Her mind was empty by now, and oh, it was so hard to form a coherent thought. The name was a lifeline, an idea to hold on to. Was it hers? It didn't matter. "I've seen you before," she said, her voice hardly more than a whisper. "You're the story collector, and I saw you today, right?" Abram said, lowering his tone to match hers. "Tell me." So she told him, her habit of people watching while reading something. She remembered his brown suit and his shiny leather shoes with the neat little bows. She remembered his brown bag tied shut with 3 knots, which he carried with ease. And as she remembered, she forgot. In her voice, she described seeing him move from door to door down her street, and in her mind's eye, each door became white at first, and then nothing at all. All that was left was a sharply dressed man. What was his name? Abram. The name floated into existence, yet no mouth was there to have uttered it. The door to 114 Ivy Street swung shut, yet nobody was there to have opened it in the first place. The street was empty, save for a man in a brown jacket and matching slacks. Had there been any observers, they would have seen this man peeling a white leathery canvas from a small metal frame. Had they been able to glimpse the canvas, they would have seen a lifelike portrait of an almost familiar face, visible for only a second before the man rolled it up and untied the 3rd knot of a large burlap bag sitting by his feet and slid it inside. But there were no observers. There was nobody to watch him fold the metal frame into the bag or tie each successive knot back into place. Nobody watched him lift the bag with ease, and nobody was there to forget his face as he walked away. Thank you for spending time with Tales with Tobin. Again, this was The Story Collector, a short story that I wrote just last month. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what you think. Any feedback is welcome, as long as it's honest. Thank you again for taking the time to do this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.